Folks, can we please have your attention at the stage? Can we please have your attention at the stage?
About improv, and he decided to play it, so I thought I'd play it too. And yes, we'll be talking about improvisation, a topic near and dear to my heart. I think it's wonderful. I think a lot of bass players don't get that. I have a good friend, y'all know who he is, from down in Florida that teaches, and he always rants and raves about the fact that guitar players and bass players don't study music in the same way that other musicians do. And it seems to be more of a cult of personality and more gimmicky and more performance-oriented, and nobody really gets solidly into the music like people who study piano or people who study violin. And I don't understand why, and I'm hearing him talk about it, I think the same thing. I don't get it. Why, a lot of us have had lessons, and you go to your lessons, and they teach you your favorite lick by your favorite guy, and play it over and over and over again, and you think that's wonderful, and that's as far as you get. And a lot of you get bored and you give up. And when I was a kid, somebody said something really important to me, and I thought it was made a big impression. And I was like everybody else. I wanted to be this, I wanted to be that. And when I was a kid, I had big talk, and I said, I want to play guitar like John McLaughlin, I'm going to play bass like Stanley Clark. And they said, yeah, instead of that, why don't you just learn what they learn and study what they study? I'm like, oh, really? And made a big impression on me, and so I did. I found out, what did those guys do? How did they get to be John McLaughlin? How did they get to be Stanley Clarke? And I've been fortunate enough to talk to both of those guys quite a bit, and Stanley Clarke especially. He's done a clinic in Detroit also, and he'll talk about the fact that it's not about learning the licks, and it's not about learning this. Of course, you study all the greats that have come before you, but there's a difference between studying them and just copying what they do without really being mindful of what it is that's going on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that stuff for you guys today. Maybe we'll have some people come up and play a little bit, or we'll see what goes on with that. But I've got handouts for you.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, I know you probably are all, how many bass players are out there? So you guys play. And I don't know what y'all, I know some of you guys are amazing musicians out here, because I recognize y'all, but I don't know what level everyone's at, or how everyone feels about certain things, or if you read, or if you understand music theory. It doesn't matter. Music is real universal, it's real simple. I tell all my students, it's just like kindergarten. You can count on your fingers, and if you know your ABC song, you can learn everything you need to know about music. You just have to pay attention, and you have to be interested. And in order to learn music, you gotta love music. And like Chuck said, I love the bass. I was a guitar player. I'll give you a little background. I was a self-taught kid. One day when I was in third grade, somebody gave my dad a big classical guitar. He brought it home, and I just was smitten. And I don't think I ever put it down. And I learned everything I could. I copied everything I could. I listened. We didn't have any YouTube or anything. We just wore out our parents' record albums by dropping the needle on there a million times so you could learn every little line. And as I was coming up, I started getting more and more interested in jazz. I was, of course, a kid of the 70s and into rock and all that stuff. And then I heard Ron Carter on a CTI album, and I just about died. And I didn't know what that was, but it just got me all the way inside of me. And I started just devouring that music, and I started devouring that history. And I had no way to do it because Mom and Dad didn't have money to get a string bass for me or anything. But I still had a dream of that, and I started listening to some other guys, Eddie Gomez and Stanley Clarke, of course. And fortuitously for me, one day when I was a senior in high school, the band director saw me in the parking lot doing things I shouldn't be doing, goofing off, and grabbed me by the back of the neck, dragged me into school, and said, "Orchestra needs a bass player, and you're going to be it." And I was like, "Okay." And they gave me a bass, and they gave me bass lessons with a local legend, a guy named Ed Pickens, who at the time was teaching at Oakland University, and I was very lucky to get Ed. And I remember walking in there, and Ed's going, "Okay, so what are you doing here?" I go, "Oh, I want to play like Stanley Clarke." And he goes, "Oh, that's nice." And he throws his big Samantha book down on the music stand and opens it up to like page 4 and says, "I'll see you in a half an hour, have fun." And there we went. And then I realized this is a lot of work. And that was the start of my bass career. As a matter of fact, Spider Webb was here before, and the very first jazz gig I played on, Ed sent me out as a sub when I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And I remember Spider was the only one nice to me. He just said, "Young man, just walk." And okay, we can try that. And we tried to keep up with it and follow it. Luckily, the guitar player I don't want to mention didn't show up for the gig anyway, so we were just winging it and having a good time. And that was kind of the beginning of my career as a bass player. Well, at that point, I started, having an interest in learning music, actual formal music, like all the kids that learned saxophone and piano and all knew about. And I always thought, geez, I can play kind of good. People think it's good, but I don't know what I'm doing. And if somebody asks me something, I'm going to be embarrassed, and I don't know nothing. And so I started paying attention, and I was lucky enough to be able to go off to Berklee College of Music for a period of time. And I was really lucky because it was kind of the heyday of that place, and I got to just hang out with everybody. And while I haven't toured with any giant super artists, I am very happy that I can count amongst my friends and peers, just great guys that I met back in the 70s at Berklee, and guys that we're not friends with, but at least I got to talk to and hang out with guys like Jocko, Pat Metheny, and Jeff Berlin, and Mike Stearns, and just everybody was there back then. Guys who didn't know were there. Joe Hubbard was there, and Stu Ham was there at the time. It was just kind of a really golden time and very neat. And it's where I realized I probably wasn't a guitar player anymore because I was totally in love with playing bass, and every weekend I was playing some kind of weird party on bass with guys I never saw before in my life, and making $10 so I could eat something besides crackers, you know, and that was about that. But Gary Burton made a tremendous impression on me, and Gary Burton, a master of improvisation, and he's the one that introduced me to Jaco Pastorius and Pat Metheny, and got to spend a lot of time listening to Jaco talk about not only how great he was going to be, but what you needed to do, you know, and how you needed to learn all your chords. You need to learn what scales go with all your chords. You need to learn the melodies, and you need to learn treble clef. Because nobody will know the song if you can't play the melody, he said. So you better learn all the melodies, so you better learn treble clef. And you know, that stuck with me, and that's kind of a fun thing. You know, with my students, we like to tell them, you can play the melody, you might not get a gig doing it, but why shouldn't you know it, and why shouldn't you understand what it is? It'll add depth to the bass parts that you're playing. And I think everyone should know what's going on around them musically. I want to know what the guitar player's doing. I really want to know what the drummer's doing. And I like to know what the piano player's doing, especially that left-handed thing. I don't want to get in the way of it, and I don't want it getting in the way of me. So there's a lot of things we can do to help train ourselves. And if you guys got questions, you can ask me, because I'll have questions for you all later, but I got prizes if you get them right. But one of the great things, and Stanley Clark said this also, the secret to, you know, soloing, which is what I'm going to mostly talk about here. And soloing doesn't mean you got to play a bunch of fancy crap, because you're not going to get any gigs soloing as a bass player. You will get gigs playing down. And Chuck already told you, you're going to get gigs playing down. So that's where the money's at. You want to have fun? That's a lot of fun. And sometimes you get to sometimes they go, hey, bass player, go ahead, you know, and it's your opportunity to shine. You better take it because you get one song, and that's it. The guitar player gets all the rest, right? Or the horn player, you know, they get it all. But one of the great things Stanley Clark said at the clinic that we had him for was, cats are sitting around and they're, you know, just working on their scale all day, up and down, up and down, up and down the scales. Carol Kay used to say, note scales, note scales. All you young guys playing note scales. Nobody knows it. It doesn't sound like music. Nobody can understand it. Play chords. And they're right. Chords are guaranteed to sound good. There's nothing that you can do that won't work. That's the chord. Those notes will always work. And if you do play melodies, and if you do the smart thing and try to analyze what's in the melodies of the beautiful music, we hope you'll pick beautiful music to study, regardless of what your favorite stuff is. The melodies are oftentimes chord tone. And they'll mix other things in with chord tone, of course, but big time, you'll see chord tone and melodies of a lot of the great, you know, great songs of our time. There's a reason why songs are called standards. It's not because they're lame, and it's not because they're boring. It's because they're still being played. People still find value in them. You know, when I heard, you know, you hear the same chord progressions even right now that you hear from back in the day. You know, and I remember Sonny. A nice little jazzy tune. Well, you've heard it played, buddy. Well, it's still Sonny. It's still a jazz tune from the 50s, and you know, and now it was a big tune in the 70s. So you'll see that kind of thing, and that's why I think standards are something that are important for us to look at and work on, and they have lots of meat on the bone. There's lots of chord changes. So guys, I've given you a couple of handouts, and kind of the first one is a harmony page, and that's what's called diatonic harmony. It means it's the harmony or the notes that form chords in a particular key. And this is major, and it's what most music is made. There's other things, of course, that, you know, harmonic minor, we can harmonize and things like that, but most of it comes from right here. And Western music is kind of built on this idea, and it's built on this formula of the major scale, which is a certain design of intervals. And hopefully you guys know your notes on your bass, and you can understand that you have half steps, and you have whole steps, and you have combinations. And the most popular combination, and the building block of all our music, is when you combine 1.5 steps, or you combine 2 steps. those are major and minor thirds. And Western music is called tertiary music, and it's because we build in thirds, we stack thirds, and we do a lot of things with thirds. Coltrane famously designed something called the Coltrane matrix, based upon chord and chord centers moving in thirds. And you'll see that all the main chords that we play are made by stacking thirds. It's kind of nice, it's kind of easy. A C chord is just a major third, followed by a minor third, followed by another major third. And if you start to recognize these intervals, when you're playing, it becomes relatively easy. And it always sounds nice and melodic. And it kind of works for anything in the key. So everything kind of works together so nicely like that. And that's just the notes of a C major chord being played over other chords that are diatonic to that key. So you can kind of see that. I recommend you guys learn the formula for a major scale. It's 2 whole steps and a half step, 3 whole steps and a half step. It's kind of an easy thing to remember, and it is really important. You need to know where those half steps are in music, or you're going to be confused when you start playing with horn bands and it's no longer E, A, D, and G. Everything's in B flat. Or F. Got from the E flat. You better know it just the same as you know the key is C. So, I've given you the, I wish I had that. So I've given you the types of chords that you will see in a major key, and they all got labels, and I gave you all the labels. You know, major keys start with major 7 chords, and in jazz and contemporary music, we don't deal so much with triads, which is where you'd start out in school. We deal with 4-note chords. We like the 7th in there. It's important to us in every kind of music. You know, there's 2 kinds of 7s, and hopefully you can see that and get it. We've all heard that, and of course you got the pretty one. So there's that, and you can kind of see that illustrated here. And you can see the notes and the chords are all kind of given to you. So memorize them all really quick right now. Okay, you can see what that's all about. But you can see major 7 chords are built by stacking a major third, a minor third, and a major third. It's kind of nice and obvious. And a minor chord is built the opposite, a minor third and a major third and a minor third. Dominant chords are a little different, and dominant chords are primarily the 5 chord, which we love because it wants to quickly resolve to the 1. But the 7 chord is also a dominant chord. And the 7 chord also would like to resolve to the 1. Dominant chords desire resolution. Tonic chords are settled. They're happy. We'll talk about them a little more in a second. So I've given you guys a guide here where you can kind of go through this and learn your chords. And get comfortable with them. You can play them in all the keys because you're going to discover them in all the keys at some point. And you're not going to sit there and play a gig and play that type of a thing. But the knowledge of that is going to help you out a lot. You know, when it's at the end of 4 bars and you'd like to do a fill, you'd like to have it be a fill that's got some sense to it. And something that works and enhances what's going on as opposed to taking away or from it. And, you know, music is phrased in a certain way, and guys feel it a certain way. And usually very evenly. Phrases are 2 bars or 4 bars, or it could be 8 bars. And if you and your drummer are locked in, you know what happens at the end of 4 bars. You got a little thing. And that lets everybody know. New phrase started, whether it's the next line of the verse or whatever it may be. If we understand what's going on here, we can find nice notes to play. You know, songs that you vamp and whatever they are. Just by understanding that we're just playing 1 to 4 chord with the key of C, we can find lots of things that we can play. Which you may not think of if you don't really understand this. You just like C, which is great, but it's not the melodic part of the song. It's a great bass line, but the song needs to have melody, and like I say, you may be lucky enough to get to take a solo, or at least at home when you're practicing, it's something to work on. It's what I like to do a lot when I practice. I just go through chord changes in my head and try to see all the different things I can discover about them. So I've got that kind of explained for you. Does anybody got any questions on this little basic harmony thingy here?
Yeah, I was just thinking about you doing your cellular modes there. I have a habit of choosing the whole scale, playing those scales. Still enough to guitar, but you used intervallic or part of the scale as you went up.
Those were the arpeggios.
Arpeggio.
Those were the arpeggios for the scale.
Were you starting on the root?
Pardon me?
Were you on the root?
I'm starting on the root, so C major 7, to D minor 7, E minor 7, to F major 7, to G 7, to A, to B. And you gotta practice those.
Yeah.
Because you're not gonna play them that way. You're gonna play them like, very seldom do we want to just be playing stuff up and down like that. So, you gotta know it, so you'll play it up and down. I try to stress to everybody, don't forget to play these things backwards. They sound a lot better backwards. I was just watching Joe Bergonzi, one of the great musicians, sax player. He builds himself as the world's greatest tenor sax player, which he probably is. But I'm listening to everything he does. Everything's like a descending bebop line, It's kind of cool sounding. It always seems to be good. So you need to make sure that we do these things backwards so you see clearly. Like Gary said, when I'm looking at a piece of music or thinking of a piece of music, I'm seeing the notes in these chords on my bass. They show up for me. Other stuff shows up too. But as the chords go by, either in my head or on the paper, there's a visual of this. And you mentioned the word intervallic. And my approach to playing bass is an intervallic approach. I consider and worry about the distance from here to there. It's kind of all I need to know. I just got to know how far I got to go. I don't really need to know names. I don't really need to know a lot of anything. If I know the distance I got to travel to get to the sound that I desire to hear, I'm all set. And these distances are very graphic on my instrument. This one doesn't have frets, but still, I kind of dream of them. It's a picture. Everything's a little picture. And if I can just, that picture flashes, as when E flashes across the there's a picture of what E minor everywhere you go. And that's, from just repeating those intervals, and regardless of what the key is or what the root of the chord might be, it doesn't matter. It's still the same little picture that you end up seeing. So I urge everybody to play through these arpeggios, frontwards and backwards, and then go through and do them in all the keys. So that's really easy to do. We have that circle of fifth wheel. You guys can all look at that thing. It's an order of sharps and flats. It's not very interesting to go forward, I will tell you right now. So really, we do the circle of fourths. We like to go backwards. Forwards is not as much fun. But you can work on all these, and some of my kids here I recognize do this type of thing, and I have guys work on these things one chord at a time, and then the entire scale through all the keys. And if you see that circle of fifths thing, you'll know that it goes, like C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, G flat. B, which is probably really C flat in this thing, and on. You'll get all the keys done that way. And you'll hopefully work through all the little kind of geometric patterns that you will see develop when you do these chords. These harp players and bass players, we have some really common things we do, major scale. We have that little pattern that a lot of us have learned. We learned the pentatonic minor scale, a lot of us, is kind of pretty big for us, right? So we see that little pattern. We start to get to recognize these rather quickly, and the trick is to recognize them well enough so you don't have to play the root every time. It sounds a lot better when you don't. Phrases always sound good when you start on the third. Phrases sound good when you start on the ninth. And that's a little going on with like leading tones and things like that, but something like this is a little more interesting because it's not so slammy in the face with that root. You're already hearing that from somebody else. The 2 or the 9 is another great way to start a phrase. It just gives it that sweet kind of sound, and I'm a big fan of using the two. I teach a lot of folks to do eighth notes at first when they're trying to solo, and so you get kind of 4 notes at a time, and it works out. You do that type of thing, but when you add 2, it really kind of gets cool. You can really whip through changes with that 2 in there, and it kind of makes it like what they call a pentatonic major. We'll talk about that in a little minute too, though. But I just want to make sure everyone gets what's going on here.
Yeah.
Y'all gonna practice that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Did you? There's like 3 ways to play a major 7th chord. You know, it's really kind of common information. You guys all go on the internet and everything else. You're not gonna remember. But you guys, you know, you probably know this one. I don't know if you know this one. A lot of guys like to avoid their pinky. Use your pinky. It loves you, love it back. It reaches farther than everybody else, so you want to have your pinky available for you. Okay? I got something else there for you. And this is where things get a little bit more difficult. And this is where we, get into the scale portion. This is why, like I say, everybody I've ever talked to, from Stanley Clark to Gary Burns, and just everybody talks about learn your chord tones, learn how to play chord tone solos. You know, Jeff Berlin's got an awesome video playing a blues progression, just your basic everyday blues, doing a great solo using nothing but chord tones. No blues licks, none of that stuff, which would be awesome. But he's not doing any of it. He's just playing straight up chord tones, and it sounds fantastic. It gives you an idea how easy this is to get started with, because scales are a little more ambiguous. There's bad sounding notes if you don't place them well. So now discretion all of a sudden comes into the formula, whereas with chord tones, really discretion is just about, hey, don't play them up and down, mix it up a little bit. Well, that's kind of easy. But with scales, it's like, oh boy, what do you mean it's a bad note? It's in the scale. Well, it's a bad note. Well, but it was a good note before. Yesterday it was good. Well, yeah, yesterday you put it in a better spot. Today it's in a lousy spot. So. And now you got a lot of things to worry about. That's okay. We can worry about those things, and we can see what sounds good, and we can see what sounds bad. We have these called avoid notes, and generally speaking, those are the 4 and the 6 of the major scale. They get in a lot of trouble if you don't place them well. And a lot of times I yell at my students, like, stop targeting an avoid note. You keep landing on a spot that we don't want to be. Mm-hmm. Those are nice for walking across. It's like a little bridge. And if you use them that way, they sound great. You guys know when you're playing any kind of like a boogie-woogie or a blues thing, so we're playing those avoid notes. The thing about them is, we're just using the stepping stones to notes we really want to hear. So we have, all on its own, over this chord, if the band's playing that, and I just went, generally not going to sound all that nice. It's going to interfere with that. That's going to interfere with that. But at the passing, it sounds fantastic, and we use it all the time. Always using those. And we can find ways to rationalize why they sound good sometimes and sometimes they don't. And it does have to do with where they're placed, who they're in between, and even what beats they fall upon. But that being said, we're certainly not going to avoid this topic. And so what I've given you are commonly used chord scales. And these 10 chord scales, along with chord tones, which are part of each one of these, will basically get you through any situation. People, can I play over? Yeah, you can play over giant steps. Yes, you can play over any kind of beautiful ballad. These things will get you through that. They'll give you notes that will sound good all the time. You guys, I don't know if you looked at this chord scale thing. Some of you might recognize it. Any of you recognize it?
The modes. Modes.
It's the modes, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. That is. And when we were taught this, we were not really taught it so much as the modes as it's the chord scale. It's that chord that's going on. Mm-hmm. And yeah, our other sheet tells us how that chord functions within a key. And we got, Greek names for them, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, right, all this stuff. And those just mean numbers. And that's okay. Those numbers refer to the location of that chord within a major scale. And you guys know jazz tunes.
Yeah.
They don't have keys, they have tone centers, because it's changing all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's your job to figure out what that's all about. the thing is, if you know these chord scales, it becomes a little less critical. And if you make a mistake, it's still okay, as long as you're playing the right chord scale. There'd be no problem, there'd be nothing bad going on. And so, what I've done here is I've kind of given these to you. First I've given you the diatonic ones, and I've given them to you kind of in an order that we universally accept, from bright to dark. And you guys know that those are considered bright, and those are considered dark, right, minor. And there's degree in there. And you might have noticed, oddly enough, number 4 is number 1. Well, number 4 is number 1. And I just read one of my buddies ranting on Facebook, would everybody stop with the Lydian already? There's other colors in the world. And he's right, you know, it's really popular. Jocko's favorite chord. My favorite chord. They just sound good. And they sound so good because they truly are the most settled of any chord. And back in the day of the chanting in the caves and all that kind of bit, they were chanting Lydian, not major. And, that was done away with when religion kind of took over the music business. And I don't really remember what year that was in, but any of you who've watched Amadeus or any of that kind of junk, you kind of know what happened is that certain things, like one of our favorite things in the world was band. And that's the tritone. And, we love it, and it's what resolves. Always. The Lydian chord contains it, they didn't like it. But the Lydian chord is the brightest chord. And that mode is that. And really you can see that all there is a major scale with a sharp 4th degree. And that sharp 4th degree gets rid of that little bit of dissonance that exists in a major scale. So, believe truly, the most settled and the most bright of all the chord scales. They call that Lydian, and you can see we spelled that out for you. The next most brightest one is the one we all know, major scale. Okay? And by the way, these are all in major category, and the other major is the dominant. And you can see the dominant again. Like I told you on the first sheet, all of our music is based on the major scale, based on thirds. Everything else is just a little tweak on it. You don't have to learn everything in this world. You just got to learn that everything is a major scale, and maybe you got a little twist over here. And I think it's easier to learn a little twist than a whole new thing. So I don't look at myself as I know 300 scales. I know one. I know the major scale. I know it really good, and I can make a little tweak. You want me to change one little thing? I can change one little thing. I don't want to learn 50 million new things. I just want to change one little thing. And that's all we're doing here, and that's how you can see everything is defined as compared to the major scale. So Mixolydian, number 5, that's we love that guy, the dominant. And you can see the only thing we've done there is we've flatted the 7. So those are your major chord scales. And the type of chords are used over, well, Lydian is used over Lydian chords, a chord that would be considered a 4 chord. It doesn't have to. But you can kind of see the context of a chord in a song, or if a chord says sharp 11, well, they're telling you, hey, it's a sharp 11. Do that. Ionian, obviously, major chords, your tonics, that's what you like. But again, we don't want to play these from the root. We want to work these so that we can recognize them all over the instrument. And we can make melodies out of these. So we want to get very familiar with that. Now we get to the dark ones, the minor keys. And there's so many of them. When you're looking at a piece of music, minor is kind of a bit of a quandary, because you have to have some type of know where it fits in. You have to look for something else in the material, or you just don't know. You kind of assume, and I don't know, I usually assume Dorian. I don't know why. I like how it sounds, because it usually sounds good.
Cool.
It's not that often where it's Phrygian. You just don't have a lot of flat 2 music. I mean, it's more specialty, the Phrygian, and it has a sound to it. People say it sounds Spanishy, and it's kind of used in that type of a context, as opposed to when you see a minor chord in a piece of music that you're playing. If you do that, you'll probably get fired, you know. But, so anyways, Dorian is the least dark, by the way. And Dorian, again, is the 2 of our major scale. And I've done all these, by the way, not to be easy on you, I made them all C root, so you have to learn the forms on all of them and not just go up and down through one key. So, you know your Dorian, and you can see what the intervals are there. Kind of a dark sounding, right? It's going to get you through most minor chords. And it's going to get you great sounding bass lines too. You've got that little. That's where you can do that majory sounding 6 walk up type thing over a minor chord. And it sounds pretty hip. A lot of guys do that, myself included. Aeolian, I put a little asterisk there. That's called natural minor. That's the 6th degree of your major scale. It's the exact same thing as the major. It's just they took off the root. That's all. And you'll see that when you do the chord arpeggios. But Aeolian's kind of, I don't know, dour sounding, not real exciting. You have that flat 6, everything's kind of flat. We get darker and darker here with Phrygian. And Phrygian, you got that flat 2, and again, that's what's creating kind of, and that 6. See, it's got kind of that Spanishy type of a sound, and you can call it Spanish Phrygian, depending on how you use it. If you play it off of the 3rd degree of the chord, you guys do that a lot. You'll hear Chick Corea do that quite often in a lot of stuff. The last one is Locrian, and I like that one. And Locrian is also a secondary dominant, which is kind of exciting. Locrian is your minor 7 flat 5, so it's kind of a super duper minor chord. Everything's flat. It's like, So we like that. Where we really like it is, we can use it really kind of cool as that secondary dominant. It just makes everything sound jazzy. You know, when I'm playing kind of just a funky groove. G sharp, you know, half diminished. Still got that funky dominant sound. I can, you know, do whatever I want. And it gives it that kind of jazzy feel by giving it that minoriness to it that's over a major chord. We love doing that, like this modal interchange type of a thing, which that topic will be another time, maybe next year. But so those are your minors, majors and minors. Is everybody okay with this so far? Are you dying out there? Are you all right? You okay, everybody? Yeah? Yeah? Any questions about any of this stuff? You get it, right? The modes?
Just I was thinking about the minor modes, the Phrygian, Aeolian, and what was the 2? The second, Dorian. You don't necessarily interchange these. You do it because of the phrases or flat.
I do it because of the context of the chord, how it sits in the piece at that moment. And you know, mostly when you'll see, you know, one of my great mentors, Rufus Reed, will tell you, the most important chord progression on the planet is the 2-5-1. Yeah? It's everywhere. Songs are all built on these 2-5-1s. So when you see a minor in a song, it's kind of easy to make that assumption, hey, it's Dorian. And it's pretty tough to make Dorian sound bad over any kind of minor chord. Obviously, if you see a minor 7 flat 5, it's not going to work out for you. And you just need to be very careful because there will be times where the context does call for something like the Phrygian, and you'll want to use that. You want to have that kind of exotic type of a sound. But Dorian is a pretty big pig. Dorian and pentatonic minor, you know, work generally for all minor chords, minor 7 chords. Minor triads, Aeolian, You know, the Keith Jarrett piece, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Keith Jarrett, but he's one of the truly great contemporary composers of our time. I gotta urge y'all, you know, whether you love that kind of music or not, there are certain composers that just are beyond. And Keith Jarrett's one of them. One of them's coming to town here in a couple weeks, Wayne Shorter. You guys gotta see Wayne Shorter. There's just, you know, people talk about Train, and Train's no longer here. Train was, you know, a musical god to a lot of us. Well, Wayne Shorter's that guy. And there's a reason why when you open a real book, it's full of Wayne Shorter, Wayne Shorter, Wayne Shorter. You got songs everywhere. Why? Because they're awesome, and they're of any variety. But Keith Jarrett, another one like that. Of course, Herbie Hancock, another one like that. Bill Evans, one of my favorite of all time. I learned so much from just learning songs that Bill Evans wrote. How can you not? And Keith Jarrett always got something funny in his music. He's always got a sense of humor. And there's something in there, and I think he used to do it to bother Miles. He always put something funny in, like that one that I was doing. It's a nice, sweet, you know, sad little ballad, and all of a sudden it goes into this country thing for a few measures. And what the heck is that, you know? And they kind of make a deal about it, too. But, so these are guys that their music has a lot of content. You know, a lot of, like I said, meat on the bones. It's worth learning this music. So I would look up composers like that. I would urge you all to go see Wayne Shorter. I don't know if Wayne Shorter will be back in Detroit again. We don't know. Wayne's in his 80s now. And he's playing amazing. And I'm not sure who he's bringing with him, but on TV he had John Patitucci on bass, and he looked like he was tearing it up. So you get to see John Patitucci also. And you've seen him, you know what he's all about.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we're going to work on these chord scales.
I just have another question. I've always wanted to ask a professional, how do you handle your improvising and you have a doink?
My what?
A doink. I call it doink. It's a mistake, but it sounds doink.
Well,
How do you come out of a situation like
I
that?
try to move on as quickly as I can. It's going to happen, you know, it's just going to happen. I, unfortunately, am not one of these perfect guys. I make mistakes. I sometimes have to do a second take or a third take. Mistakes are going to happen. Sometimes they're happy accidents, though, and you like them. Other times they're not. You got to resolve that note the best way you can. Guys will tell you, guys that play around a lot, that the right note is never more than 2 frets away from the wrong one you just played. Okay? It's either 1 or 2. So get yourself off of there and go. You can't dwell on it. You got to move on. Nobody will know but you if you keep going. I mean, what Chuck tells us, one of the best notes he ever played was the wrong note. Right?
Yeah.
Which one? That's Phrygian. Phrygian to me means 3, I guess. But yeah, Phrygian, and that's the one with the flat 2. Like I say, the specialty. So you get that nice Spanishy sound out of there. There's a song called La Fiesta by Chick Corea. Listen to Stanley Clark's bass solo. It's phenomenal. It's Phrygian. So you get to hear some of that. Yeah,
If you learn these by numbers, is it you can play it anywhere on
Yes.
the fretboard?
Yes.
So
And that's why the numbers are on there. There's even dudes you will see that teach on the interweb and stuff. They talk about digital, and they're talking about something, not the new amps that they make that we love so much. They're talking about the digital way of looking at all this and writing down the numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7, and mixing them up and doing all the permutations. And I think we figured out there's 24 ways to mix up 4 notes.
right,
So you got to know 24 ways to mix up 4 notes.
learn it by
Right.
numbers.
Just like my old guitar teacher said, there's 7 ways to play every chord. You better know at least 5. Like, okay, how do we do that? But there are. And having some extras helps out too. And there are extras, and we'll talk about the extras in a minute. But you all good on major and minor chord scales, right? You can work
Yes.
on those, we can play all those, and we're going to make ourselves happy with that. And you can get them good enough so you don't play them from the root all the time, right? You can play from the 3rd, you can play from the 7th, you can have a good time with them, yeah? Okay.
Do you teach this though? You teach this on the web? On
Not too much, no.
YouTube?
I'm still, I'm old, so I teach in person. I'm trying to learn to teach on the web. I wish I taught on the web, but I teach mostly in person. I've occasionally got a Skype student here and there, and that's about that. So, but I'm open to Skype. It works out.
Skype, okay.
So I'm open to Skype. Anyways, I got just a couple more of these for you. these are kind of specialty scales. We still love them. And this is something we do see quite often, Lydian flat 7, which is just, you guys see a dominant flat 5 chord in a piece of music quite often. A lot of times if it's a minor blues, the 5 chord will be a flat 5, or it'll be a sharp 9, or some type of an altered dominant chord. You'll see these weird things. Well, Lydian flat 7 is kind of the first and simplest one. Got a little bit of an exotic sound to it. We like it. You have that in there. Okay, different than Lydian, it's got the flatted 7, so it's used over dominant chord, and pretty common to use it over dominant 7 flat 5, which you'll see quite a bit. You know, that's and you can use it over a regular dominant chord. Nobody will get mad because the flat 5 always sounds kind of good as a blue. That's one of our blue notes, the flat 5. So we like to use that. You get that kind of push to that fifth of the chord. So that's kind of a neat way to go. So Lydian flat 7, another one of the important ones. Super locrian is what I call this next thing because I just like saying super. A lot of people call it the altered scale. Yes, you guys maybe you've heard of it. Maybe you've seen a piece of music and you see C7 ALT and you're like, what is that? Well, that's altered. And by altered, what do you mean? So it fits me better? No. It means they've done something to the 5th or the 9th or both. Okay? And it's kind of cool. I don't know if any of you guys play the guitar. I know you guys play some cool music, but you know, we got something called the Jimi Hendrix chord. Back in the day, we used to all call it the Jimi Hendrix chord. That chord is an altered chord. It's a sharp 9 chord. It sounds kind of fancy. It's not fancy at all. It's just a dominant chord.